In another 4 days, Nigeria's ruling party, the All Progressives Congress, will be holding a primary election among would-be contenders for the governorship of Edo State in September. But the party, which has governed the state since 2016, would be doing so in a badly fragmented condition in the wake of the ongoing crisis that has in the past few days led to the resignation from its ranks of the incumbent Godwin Obaseki and, more strikingly, a court pronouncement which upheld the suspension of the national chairman of the party, Adams Oshiomhole. An attempt by the APC National Working Committee to transfer power to one of its national vice chairmen has been mired in a dogfight, which, if not properly managed, may lead to dire consequences for it in the forthcoming election. That issue is what we're about to pick up with our first guest, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, public communications expert, leadership and governance consultant, and executive director, Development Specs Leadership Academy, Abuja. We'll also try to get his thoughts on the serial flouting of safety guidelines on COVID-19 with little or no consequence by Nigerian public figures, and of course the continuing invasion of the southeast of Nigeria by street urchins from the northern parts and what the authorities there are doing about it. Good morning, Dr. Ikechukwu. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, and thank you very much. Good morning, thanks.
Let's start with what appears to be this battle of mutually assured destruction in the APC, all because two individuals just don't get along. It's looking like it might cost the party dearly, or will it? What is your take on the decamping of the incumbent governor from the APC to the PDP, and also this issue with the national chairman, Adams Oshiomhole, and how his suspension was sensationally upheld by the Court of Appeal, and efforts to have a stand-in, as it were, are proving quite controversial?
Well, I think there's nothing fundamentally surprising in what is going on in Edo State. We saw what happened to the last governor before the incumbent one when he disagreed with the person who put him in office. But he did not resign, and that brings in a dimension that the Edo one is slightly different. Assuming, for instance, Obaseki is not interested in returning as governor, chances are that he will not have resigned. He probably will have stayed back and played anti-party politics, encourage members of the party to join another party, and then field a candidate on that via that party. I mean, Bayelsa did it, APC did it in Bayelsa. So that's one aspect of it. The other one, of course, is that, and it's still not surprising, is that what is playing out is also what has played out in many states and is still playing out, where governors fall out with their sponsors or godfathers, and within the tenure, probably first or second tenure, assume that they have the capacity to wield as much influence with the people behind them, and then probably find out too late that it's not going to work. Now, in all of this, the real danger is the possibility of the party losing out completely, and that may snowball into other negatives for the party beyond the state itself. If you recall how Oshiomhole came into office, he was described as having dislodged the strongest political influences in the state. I'm not from the state, so I don't know whether that is true. It was deemed to have come in on a lot of popular support. The incumbent governor was presumed to have been put in place by him, and everything seems to suggest that that is true. But you'll also recall that as he was leaving office, a former Labour president, a foremost people's man, if you like, fighting for the masses, part of the benefits attached to him as leaving office, whether as governor, he will have a 200 million naira house. I think his deputy, that 150 or 100. Now, all of this then presented a challenge for many who would want to see him as one of them, and in terms of the masses. Now, also his emergence as chairman, the removal of Oyego, had its own bitter taste in the mouth. Then his tenure as chairman, the managing of that office, the perception that he was sometimes high-handed, the perceptions that he sometimes actually did not understand the position. If you recall, when some Nigerians were attacked in another country, in South Africa, he came out to announce that Nigeria should, I think, seize all the assets of the country, confiscate it, shut them down, which was very embarrassing in my view because, one, the companies here are in Nigeria. Nigerians are the ones working there. Nigeria has bilateral relations with many countries. You see, there's a dimension to leadership that brings a certain dignity and decency to be on it. Some members of the party perceive, assume, and insist that their current chairman, the recently suspended chairman, has not been too much of an asset to the party, but that's one view. His supporters hold a contrary view. Eventually, he went before the court of law. Adjudication was sought and judgment obtained. Now that judgment has been upheld. The upholding of the judgment, based on the facts of the case, will seem to point to clearly incontrovertible legal submissions. The more critical issue for Oshiomhole and the APC and the government is, where do you think you're going with all of this? Because it all seems consistent with the party's failure to organize itself from the time it took over power in 2015. The various factions were not united. The list of ministers were announced without consultation with the people, because when the president did it, everybody cried out, and nearly all those who cried out were from the APC. And then you look closely, yes, the ACN, the CPC, and then fractions of ABGA that Girocha has brought, and several other strands, and PDP came into the party. But they did not create a common governance template or an ideology before and after they won the elections. So the first thing that happened after the elections was that a faction of the party confiscated the Senate presidency, made the Saraki Senate president against everything the party tried to do. Now, this is clearly the wrong time for the APC to be doing what it is doing now. In its 5 years, it hasn't held any cohesive, it hasn't indicated any clear cohesion. It has not also indicated a clear ideological trajectory. It has also not demonstrated clear evidence of party democracy, would have made it better than the PDP, because despite appearances to the contrary, there was challenge of internal democracy in the PDP while it was in power. Even now that is the opposition, the challenge remains. And that's why some people looking around will ask you, as PDP that says is opposition, what is it that the current governors and the party itself are doing that will make anybody want to say, let us replace them with the APC? They are the same, but these are by the side. On the core matter of the Edo controversy, the most important thing is that the people of the Edo state must not suffer because of this. Let the big boys and girls meet, hold their supporters in check so it doesn't break into violence, follow the rule of law, and then play the politics the way it ought to be played. I think the state should demonstrate some greater maturity. Chief Aneni had a reputation for holding the place together. And Ogbemudia, even from the time we were young, made a lot of Nigerians who were not from Bendel State proud. Till his death, he was, and he remains today, a highly respected man. In those days, you think of his tradition, both cultural and political, and spare everybody the spectacle that we're all seeing on the national media.
All right, let's get down to it. So I'd like to know, what are the chances of Obaseki as a person leading up to this? He's got his work cut out for him. He started to meet with PDP top dogs. He's everywhere now, trying to cut a deal for himself. What are the chances of Obaseki?
I do not know. One, I think he started it too late. He should have read the auguries well. Oshiomhole is a powerful political player. He has some powerful forces behind him, even if they are of the slightly rougher type. So, assuming he saw, one would have expected I should have foreseen this, and what he's doing now would have been done before and kept in the back office in case it becomes necessary to pull it. That's number one. Number two, he must also convince himself that the PDP he's going to has the capacity to redeliver. Number three, even if he doesn't, if he actually has enough following in the APC, all that will happen is what has happened in several states, and I mentioned the case of Bayelsa in the last elections. The people on the election day, they will not say they are not APC, but they will go that day and vote the candidate. Now, the other issue is that Obaseki wants the ticket. There's nothing unlawful in that. But you know he's going to attract the animosity of sitting members of the PDP who also want that ticket, who did not foresee that he will come in, who see him as an interloper, and who therefore may be interested in aborting it for him since he has also aborted their ambitions. We saw that in the PDP during the last elections when a lot of people, even though they didn't say it, were very angry that Atiku got the ticket. They try to appease them by making them technical advisors to Atiku, which was in itself even more insulting when you have people like Lamido, McCarthy, Ekweremadu, and one other person just announced as technical advisors. So the challenge here is for him. Yes, he might pull it off, but you see, assuming he didn't, he wasn't striving so desperately to return as governor, his chances of playing independent power politics may yield more result. But in all of it, we are speculating. It's a question of what political forces are at play, what stakeholders are going to be appeased by his continued governorship, what interests people think they will protect if he returns, and what new profits people think they will make if he goes away. As it is, it's a 50-50 thing. He's been making all the consultations. The big boys and girls he's talking to must see their own interests also factored into a return of Obaseki. Over and above all of this is that Obaseki also did not anticipate he will leave after 4 years, and so it's quite possible that he's concerned about some things he maybe should have tidied up and which he thinks a second tenure will help him to do.
Indeed, Doctor. Mr. Maswagban of PDP, one of the aspirants there for the governorship ticket, is already kicking against any kind of automatic ticket for Governor Obaseki. What about the political future of Adams Oshiomhole going forth? He was able to secure his sort of extended tenure as national chairman in March when he was almost thrown out there. And even he alluded to that bribe. Yeah, even he doesn't argue with that. He promised then that he will make compromises and change his ways, but apparently that hasn't happened. Do you think he can survive this, and what happens for him going forward?
Actually, my concern is whether it's advisable for him to even survive it in the interests of both the party and the nation. This is a critical time for all the political parties, particularly the ruling party. There's poverty, there's insecurity, there's disrespect for the presidency because of nepotism, and there's living in denial by many of those who ought to help make a good image for government, despite its efforts in COVID, which is not worse than what many countries are doing. Nobody sees the benefit in it. Now, Oshiomhole as continued chairman, the question to ask is, what will he deliver? For many, he will deliver a lot, and that's the person they need. For me, let's do a simple power analysis with a sense of history and not hysteria. He was Labour leader for a long time, a very popular one, very effective one, organized strikes, and did a lot of things. He came into political office. He still wore his skimpy shirt and trousers. But then the details of that tenure did not suggest that this is a people's man. That was the first worry. Secondly, he became chairman, and part of what emerged immediately was a tendency to imperial temperament, making announcements. That's the first thing that led to the quarrel between him and them. So it's for the party to ask itself, is it in our interest for him to continue as chairman? Should we humiliate him if we think he shouldn't be chairman? I think it will not be good to humiliate Oshiomhole. The way Oyegu left, a man of distinguished career in the civil service, we were together at the Guardian editorial board, a retired man at that level who also was on the editorial board, who will attend meetings diligently and do stuff. These are people concerned. He wasn't, the way he was made to exit, it's not a hereditary position. He can't be there forever. There was a triumphalism after his removal, which was not good. I think the APC should not allow that to repeat itself. If Oshiomhole must go, which may be advisable for him, they should find some kind of soft landing, promote him out of relevance, as politicians will say, make him whatever you like, but the party is in a state and situation and circumstance where it will be absolutely foolish to deepen the crisis on the table. The issue in power and state power is that once somebody becomes part of the problem you have to deal with, when you're trying to use him to solve a problem, you remove him so that you face the problem itself. It would appear by general observation, activities in the party, reactions from the state, and the deliveries from the courts of competent jurisdiction that Oshiomhole may have become part of the problem of the APC, and it's for the party to decide how to deal with that problem.
All right, let me take you a little bit away from politics now. Let's talk about a certain young man called Naira Marley.
Politics.
and you might want to say the politics of Naira Marley and breaking COVID lockdown guidelines. I think we might say the politics of Naira Marley. Putting his name on the manifest, his younger brother's name, as Babatunde Fashola as the minister, getting authorization or not getting authorization to fly. I mean, the cacophony that surrounds what played out in our national life. What's your take on this?
Well, my take on this is multifaceted, but I'll do a two-pronged entry. One, to examine the legality of the issues concerned, and then the morality of the person, actions, and conduct of Naira Marley himself. At the level of legality, there are protocols, state protocols, industrial protocols, including protocols for flight during COVID. For ExecuJet to be allowed to fly anything or anybody at all, it means that there are protocols which, once an airline meets it, can fly in specific situations. The example they gave, the case they mentioned was that the information was that he was flying, that they were going to fly a judge to Abuja, but which was distorted, which means that there are circumstances under which people can fly. I've had people speak of elite abuse, only big men can fly. It is only natural and mandatory that government and governance do not come to a halt during emergencies. And so, assuming, for instance, the vice president needs to move around, or the chief of army staff, or whoever, you can't say, oh, because there's COVID, because it's not traveling with a crowd. Now, it is, in point of law, if you've met the conditions, you fly. But the issue they have with Naira Marley is that the authorities were misinformed about who was going to be on that flight. And to the extent that that happened, there must be penalty in law for that violation, and it's the duty of government to apply that penalty. It is as simple as that. Now, whether he used names or not, whether some people colluded with him from the airline that, look, we can hide you, we can pretend he's a lawyer, we can do it. That's a matter for investigation to unravel. So legally, something has gone wrong, and the appropriate thing was done. Now, the suspension of ExecuJet, if it's not part of the penalty that should go for giving misinformation or manifest, the suspension should be lifted. But if it's part of the statutory penalties, then it should stand. Also, we don't need to multiply the penalty by 2,000 simply because we're under COVID. Law is law. If it's seen to always apply, then the opportunity for discretion and arbitrary acts of wickedness will not arise for people in office. Having said that, I will touch on then the morality of the person and activities of Naira Marley. What makes you a Malian? Some of the conditions are quite obvious. I think sometime about 4 months ago, they were planning a rally in Lagos. It was advertised in a paper. It was, I think, Reverend who sent it through, I got it. Shegun Adeni shared it. What was it about? If you're going to come for this conference or walk, or what do they call it, in the night, these are the things for the men, for the young men. If you're going to wear shoes and it has laces, you don't tie your shoelace, you don't wear belt. For the ladies or the girls, you don't wear your undies and you don't wear bra and all of that. And you explore some of the other details of what makes you a Malian. It includes a resolve that, in fact, you diminish yourself if you do not do something that's against the law. Carry yourself in a certain manner. It shows your independence. If you're in school, you don't even have to graduate, because people don't necessarily. Not only people who went to school survived. So the entire project then becomes what you might call a reversal of the rules of civility and civil society. And a lot of young people are being misled, forgetting that the values of right and wrong cannot depend on how you feel at a particular time. Yes, Naira Marley may be filling a gap in the failure of the state, of parenting, of responsible leadership, of correct role models. But the truth of the matter is that if you follow that to the end, it leads to what happened in Abuja. They are saying we told them to stay in their cars when they didn't. Tell me, if your basic philosophy is that you must not miss any opportunity to misbehave, why should you behave well at your own event? These are the things to consider. So the morality, and I will take it beyond the concept of morality to see the spiritual misfortune of that philosophy, of that developing outlook, is that a lot of people are going to be progressively led away from everything they believe to be right. Because you can't accept all of this and still say in all good conscience you believe in God. It's not possible. You've become the source of value. Oh, it is your turn. These young people calling themselves Malians need a few things explained to them. A day will come when the body will grow old. When you're being told that, oh, since you can sleep around and make money, come on, go ahead and do it. Don't be a Drew. For how long will the body take that beating? Which society has developed because people were purely physical and sexual? What has happened to all those who followed it to the end? Is anybody taking inventory of those who, on that mistaken assumption that this is freedom, have gone into drugs, excessive drinking and womanizing, and have got all kinds of diseases? So these are more serious matters than whether he came to Abuja or not. People who have access to large crowds have become terrible role models. And most of the time, particularly for our female artists, what is being marketed is sexuality, neither humanity nor femininity. And I'll cite an example without intending to be deliberately personal. Take a lady like Tiwa Savage, good musician, excellent voice. Imagine her singing dressed as a regal person. Her carriage will have a certain effect. Her beauty will still be admired, but people will see more of her femininity than her sexuality. And these are the things that are missing, even with the organizations or institutions supposed to be controlling them. Everything is not right in the name of art. Every form of conduct is not justified just because you're an artist. These are facts that need to be made clear. 2004, yes, we were in the US for the 2004 New York Film Festival. I led the Nigerian delegation. All the Nollywood stars were at that event. A few things became clear because we had several meetings, that most of these people actually are responsible and will be part of an engagement if only they can be engaged honestly. Interact closely with people like Omotola, the two not very tall men. What's this other guy that speaks with all of them? Aki and Popo, yes. Yeah. And what's his name? The other Igbo guy with a beard. Look, that industry needs to be made, because you have people who grew up properly who are in it. But when you market a hippie culture as the dominant profile, people will go along with it. In some, Malian, or the Malian outlook orientation, represents anti-human evolution, anti-God, and to the best of my knowledge, one of the greatest misfortunes that will face any youth who decides to follow it through. The excitement will go. If you die at that rally, life goes on. So nobody's taking inventory of the casualties of ruined lives, or the fact that it doesn't translate into anything, or the fact that income is not the same as happiness, or the fact that making money does not translate into your being human. These are the challenges posed. But over and above all of that, is that even greater challenges are posed by our wretched class of leaders who, by setting wrong examples and only advertising big cars and new houses, have also created a young generation of onlookers who think that the best thing that can happen to them is for them to also have access to a lot of cash which they can blow at the slightest opportunity.
Spot on. I mean, it's so well put. And any Malian, including Naira Marley himself, displaying this kind of impunity that we disapprove of, can they really be blamed? Because there are no consequences to greater acts of impunity that we see all over the place. The erosion of values is so dramatic, and it needs to be abated. Moving on from that, unfortunately, I'm going to talk about even baser behavior, that of marauding bandits who come in, leave a path of destruction in their wake, murdering men, women, and children with no consequences. And the unfortunate fact that a peaceful protest was organized in Katsina State, and the convener of that protest is in police custody as we speak, Mr. I can't recall his name, Ashir Sharif, chairman of the Board of Coalitions of the Northern Coalition, has been arrested for organizing a peaceful protest in a democracy. Can we discuss this, sir?
The Katsina, if you remember, that's the state where the governor signed an agreement with bandits that they will be of good behavior, they will start raiding the place. The governor was in a photograph we saw on national television and which was on the front page of many newspapers. Standing alone, standing unarmed, well-dressed. Beside him were bandits carrying AK-47. First of all, this is the Chief Security Officer of a state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The man, criminal, standing beside him was wielding an AK-47, a military assault rifle that is banned in Nigeria. And the man is being celebrated as a partner of the state to promote security. Now, why would a bandit, who is a bandit? He lives by plunder, by working against the state. He has no other means of livelihood, strictly speaking. So if he's going to sign an agreement with you, that means you've worked out some means of livelihood. So our conclusion, observing from the outside, was that very likely Masari must have given them some money. But I recall that I wrote an article then on the back page of This Day, the title, I think, Masari's agreement with bandits or something like that. And I pointed out that this was, to begin with, an impressive act of folly that will achieve nothing, because a bandit needs to feed. When they run out of cash, they will come back again. The very idea of signing that agreement falls flat on its face. I also referred to the wrong notion, if you recall, some years ago, by the late, I think, Chief of Defense Staff, Bade, that the Boko Haram people had signed for a ceasefire. And it was actually celebrated. For me, this was baffling, coming from a professional institution. Boko Haram exists as a rejection of the Nigerian state and proof of its determination to replace it. And then they come and say they are signing a ceasefire. And you actually accept it. Ceasefire with who? People you should dispatch into oblivion? They only needed time to recover and get more arms. And of course, by the time they recovered, I think a month or two later, they resumed. Now, taking all of that back to Katsina. So it's good we started from Katsina. It's not working. Most other states are in even worse or similar situation. Where all of this is leading us is to a simple, painful fact. The Nigerian state is no longer capable of securing itself internally. The network of measures used to create and sustain internal security have all collapsed. And the last of these actually is armed engagement. National security is not the same thing as national defense. A nation becomes more secure when more people are not hungry, when there's health, when there's good infrastructure, and when misconduct is unattractive. When is misconduct unattractive? When you get picked up for doing something wrong and others will not follow your example. So national security becomes part of public citizenship consciousness. Defense is a different thing. It may be against, and mostly often against, the external forces. Then internal security becomes policing and the rest of it. Now, the way the country is today, all the things that could drive national security are in total disarray, such that even sections of the country feel so much in the rain that they don't think they are part of the country. There are too many divisive voices and groups across all age brackets. Everybody wants his own state. Even Katsina, I mean, we've been hearing of IPOB from the southeast. Now we have what I hear is IPOK, you know. So, looking at it, in the midst of all of that, people are moving from one part of the country to the other in the name that they are farmers or herdsmen. They are not being arrested. They plunder continues. They settle in bushes.
Doctor, I beg your pardon. We've got to bring this conversation to a close. We've run out of time. But thank you for joining us this morning.